Hello, everyone. It's exciting to be here. You probably ask, why is Microsoft at an agriculture conference? And in fact, I'm not going to talk about Microsoft in general and our sustainability programs today. I talk specifically more about what we're doing around agriculture. And just to set the stage and probably get this question out of the room, so our focus in agriculture is, first of all, bringing agriculture to rural farming, so making technology accessible all over the world. There is a second priority around environmental sustainability and driving innovation, so what we're talking about today. And then there's a charter around economic growth, so how can we enable the agriculture and food ecosystem to use data and AI and machine learning to make better decisions in agriculture, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before we go there, and you will see many of those slides today, but as if it's not difficult enough that we need to produce more food, we also want to use less input and we have more uncertain conditions, such as the climate change. Look at those numbers. 50% of topsoil lost. In rural farming, people lose up to 50% of their yield to pests and diseases. We're using more resources that are available every year. How is this sustainable? So the system is really out of balance. So I'm asking, if Earth would be a company, would you want to run the agriculture division? No one raised their hand, just for the records here. But this is what it's not about, right? This is really about making better decisions every day and every part of the value chain. And this slide is supposed to be complex to distress you a little bit. So that's like Sandra's elephant slide in a not as visual way. But the point I want to make is that productivity is a key driver for sustainable agriculture. Means something different for a farmer who wants to understand what to plant, where, how much input is needed, and what's the return on investment at the end of the year. Where for a rural farmer, the question is, will I be able to feed my family? For a researcher, the question might be, how can I find a seed that's more drought resistant, that has a better way to survive? So the questions are very, very different. The same when you think about food loss and waste. Food is, we throw away, or we lose about 50% of food, and that's along all parts of the value chain. And then one point I want to make here, and I don't know if it's coming up in other talks, it's only getting more complex. Because we talk about a new consumer, which is great, a new consumer that's much more informed, that makes much more informed decisions. But it's also going to be a more complex food system with more food varieties, where food plays a more important role in our health. So once we understand how different food is impacting our personal diet, you will see a rise of more personalized products, which leads to an even bigger issue of, predicting demand in a certain market and creating the right products and bring it to the place where it's needed. So the whole food system is getting even more complex in the future. So let's talk a little bit about decision making. And this is a little bit a provocative slide that says, in the 10,000 years of agriculture history, a lot of the decisions and a lot of the learning has been passed down from generation to generation. And while it got a little bit better, we have paper records, and then we have electronic records. We even have some really fancy dashboards today. It's still very much in silos. So a farmer gets a nitrogen reading, but it's not really putting data into context. It's not really making sense out of the different inputs coming out of that. Now, I want to make a simple example. If I would ask you, what have you done on October 20, 2012? Would you remember? Would you remember what you were? Would you remember who you saw? Do you remember what weather it was? I see people getting their phones and trying to figure it out. So that's not the point, that's all possible. But what I want to explain is artificial intelligence is about mining massive amounts of data and finding patterns that were not been able to see before. So it's a human-like system. It's just better in processing lots of information. And it's very common in other industries. So I'm assuming most of you came here either by a car or by a plane. So every single part in this car or in this plane is constantly sending information back to their manufacturer to understand when it's going to break, when there's going to be an issue. And that's really what AI is helping us in agriculture. So we're changing analytics from understanding what happened in the past or what's happening right now to be able to predict or preempt or drive specific outcomes based on analytics. And that's really what this is all about. Now, what does this mean for a farm? So one of the priorities our team has, it's a system, it's a data hub that we're creating called FarmBeats. And FarmBeats takes input from all different kinds of sensors, all different kinds of image data like satellite and drones, environmental data, historical data, and it puts it in a timeline and in a geographical order so it's easy to run analytics on top of those aggregated sets of data. And this is then helping to make better decisions on the farm. So whereas in the past, most decisions have been made on a whole field, we're going to a future where you make a decision on a single plant on a farm, understanding what this plant needs at this time. Same as, for transportation and getting, like I said, getting products to where they're needed, to being able to say, where is the demand? What is the demand going to be in this market with this retailer at this time? But also to really truly understand what is the sustainable footprint of a product. And there's a lot of education. You all came here, so I probably don't have to tell you, but the cup of coffee you drank this morning, it took 37 gallons of water to create this cup of coffee. And not everyone knows that, right? Or a steak, steak I think is, don't quote me on that, but I think it's 1,800 gallons of water to create a steak, right? So by being able to track those things, we can educate the consumer better. Consumers can make better decisions in the future. So that's helping just everyone to make more informed decisions. Now, you might ask, why is she putting research at the end of the value chain? And I really want to call out that I think there's a break today. When you think about every food research that's done, every seed research that's done today, it's mostly based on research farms. And we truly haven't connected like consumer insight or consumer demand and consumer feedback back to research. And I think that's really a missing gap in order to improve faster and really produce the food that's needed in the future. Now, artificial intelligence really comes in different shapes and forms, and some things are easier, or we see being more adopted today, others a little bit further out. I thought I'd bring, I think I have 4 examples just to walk you through some. What I want to say is that basically for all those scenarios, there is existing case studies out there where companies have proven that there's significant impact that can be done by using technology. So the first example here, I want to show you. So this is Sean Stratman. He's a farmer in Carnation, which is close to Seattle, where I live. He's like a celebrity farmer by now, because he gets all the nice visits. He's been working with us on FarmBeats for the last 4 years. So on his farm, we have instrumented the farm using sensors in the ground. We're also using both satellite images. We run drones from time to time, and a lot of sort of the ways to test it out and demonstrate it to other people we've done on his farm. So he got visits from Bill Gates, he got visits from all different kinds of deputies and ministers on this farm. But you see that the numbers are actually speaking for it. So he was able to reduce the water he needed for irrigation. He was able to reduce the input. But also, more importantly, he uses, for example, this helium balloon that you see on there. There's a very low-cost camera mounted at the bottom of this helium balloon. And this is monitoring the farm 24/7. And that, for example, tells him if there's a flood from the local river, which products have been impacted by the water, because he has to throw away those products in the past, you basically had to throw out everything, and this really reduces us to the products that are impacted. He also uses this to detect the bear who's stealing sort of the products right before the harvest. Don't ask us what he's doing with the bear, but he's using the system to detect it. This is another example, and I think it's important to talk about rural farming, because it cannot be that a country like Africa has to import $35 billion of food in a growing country, right? So we want to make sure that rural farming in those areas gets more successful. So this is Monica, and we actually had a team coming out to Monica. Monica has, in the past, used 17 hours a week to get water, and not getting enough water to feed her fields. So here is a partner called Sun Culture who developed a solar-powered smart irrigation system, who is now helping to pump this water up and make it as accessible for drip irrigation. So with this drip irrigation, it really also forecasts the weather conditions, so it's more precise, managing the water, regulating the water, that's only using so much water as needed. Can you imagine like 2 to 5 times more yield using such a system compared to the past? So this is really, those are the areas where you can make a huge impact. Not to say that the smart irrigation system comes with a light that farmers have to read in the evening, which they didn't have. It comes even with a television set where they train farming practices for farmers and sort of educate them about new practices. It's a really, really cool system. A little bit of a different project, but also very exciting, and this was a project in India, actually started 2015. Very simple approach. We create a sawing app, although don't even scratch app, because basically this is a sawing text message phone call system that is telling farmers different things like when to plant, when to water, when to treat something on the farm. Farmers were very concerned about that. We delayed the planting in the first year, 10 days, which then really made them nervous, right? How can you trust technology? We're basically using satellite image, weather data, historic soil data, and some public available data that was out there. So they increased yield by 30% and actually sort of really significantly increased the number of farmers that want to participate in the next year. What we learned out of that, and that's another use of AI, is text messages are great. They were translated in a local language, which are quite a couple in India, as you can imagine. But we also learned that not every farmer can read. So we then started to change this into phone calls. So there's a system, an AI-based system, that's calling the farmers now and provide this insight via phone call. So really simple things to use technology in a really meaningful way. I know the next session, and I'm probably, is all about indoor farming. So I just want to raise this example really quickly, because I do think it has a role to play. It's significantly using less water. It's growing, much more food in a smaller space. It's not going to replace farming, but it's an important factor. Here we had a project by the University of Wageningen, where 6 teams were competing in an AI challenge to run a greenhouse against the growers team. So it's really important to understand that our team actually won. That's one of the reasons I'm telling you this. But it's important to understand that they were optimizing for light. So they were the second when it comes to energy. They were not the highest in terms of using energy, but they used less pesticides, less chemicals. They used less water, and they significantly increased the profit and the yield in their farm. And what's important to understand here is that really AI, the way how it's enabling it, it's helping to make decisions before they happen. Say that all the time. So when you compare it with the growers team says, oh, it's getting too warm in here, we need to turn on the vent. AI is knowing this ahead of time, and it's regulating things like temperature earlier. So this is really how you can come to very little consumption and still having more profit than others. So I want to raise the awareness because a lot of people I talked to last night and even this morning, I learned are from nonprofit organizations. We have this initiative that's called AI for Earth. And really, the aim of AI for Earth is to drive innovation in agriculture. It's focused on 4 areas. It's agriculture, biodiversity, water, and climate change. And what we want to enable is research organizations, universities that want to innovate something and help sharing that with the community to use this program to get funded and to get support from the Microsoft side. This is not a for-profit thing. This is truly because we believe not a single company, not a single university, not a single other entity is going to make it alone. So this is about harnessing an open ecosystem of innovation for sustainability. I mentioned those 3 areas as our key focus areas in the past. If you want to approach me throughout the 2 days and understand what's behind global access, it's a combination between connectivity, education, training, sustainable. I just mentioned the AI for Earth program, and I quickly mentioned the Farm Beats program, but I'd love to be able to share a little bit more what each of those programs are all about and how we can partner with companies, universities, research organizations, government. Love to have this conversation. Now, I want to leave you with this long list of what is all needed to make this successful. But truly, what I think is good here in this conference is a very good start about, 1, creating awareness, so really understanding what are the different concepts that are going to help us in the future. But it's also a great example of bringing those multidisciplinary teams together. Like I said before, I think it's a combination of nonprofit, it's a combination of commercial, it's a combination of pharmas, universities, and all tech companies like us coming together and help solving things together, which also goes to corporate responsibility and say this is not just about making profit in an industry, that's really truly about helping everyone to preserve this world. So I want to thank you and excited to talk to you while I'm here. Thank you.
All right, Claudia, thank you so much.